Welcome, dear dreamer, to the world of Cleopatra and to the simmering heat of Egypt. Tonight's sleep story tells the tale of how this legendary queen flirted and charmed her way into power and influence, changing the face of history forever. If you enjoyed these quiet, scandalous journeys through history, tap like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for a new sleepy story every night. So close your eyes now. Let the sand grow still. Let the Nile go quiet. Let the stars slide slowly over Alexandria. You are not in the present. You are in a palace of white stone cooled by fountains, wrapped in incense, lit only by oil lamps and the moon. A girl sits there, not yet a queen, not yet a myth, just a girl. 15 maybe, curious, quiet, watching. Her name is Cleopatra. She is not what the poets will later write, not a temptress, not yet. She is a girl behind a curtain, listening to the way men speak when they think no one hears, to the pause between orders, to the sigh between lies. Her father is Ptolemy the 12th, a king made nervous by debt and diplomacy. He owes Rome everything, and Cleopatra learns early how it feels to live in the shadow of a larger power. She watches as Roman ambassadors are welcomed with lavish gifts and empty smiles. She watches her father bow when he shouldn't. She remembers who bowed back and who didn't. Because Cleopatra understands something, even as a girl. Words are one kind of power, but charm is another. By day she is a princess. She learns mathematics, rhetoric, philosophy, but most of all she learns languages: Egyptian, Latin, Greek, Aramaic, languages of the traders, the priests, the soldiers, the diplomats. By the time she is a teenager, she can speak to nearly every man who visits the palace, in his own tongue, not to impress him, but to disarm him. Her sisters are louder. They compete for attention with jewels, perfumes, laughter that doesn't quite reach their eyes. But Cleopatra? She waits. She asks questions. She lets others reveal themselves. And they do, over and over. All you have to do is tilt your head, smile, listen like it matters, and they'll tell you everything. There is no crown on her head yet, no title, but already Cleopatra is slipping into conversations she shouldn't be in. Not because she's sneaking, but because no one notices she's there. A glance here, a question there. She learns what advisors are loyal, which generals drink too much, which senators from Rome are tired of being told no. And slowly the image begins to form, not of war, not of conquest, but of entrance, of how she will step into the story, not by pushing the door open, but by being invited through it. Her first test comes quietly. Her father is called away, again, to plead with Rome for support. The court is tense. Supplies are tight. The Nile hasn't flooded as high as usual. One of her older sisters tries to seize power, loudly, proudly, publicly. Cleopatra doesn't. She waits. She slips notes to advisors, soft reassurances, clever warnings, gentle corrections whispered to the right people at the right time. And when the chaos settles, the sister is gone, and Cleopatra is still exactly where she was, present, untouched, smiling faintly. Let the marble floors cool now. Let the wind off the river whisper through the lattice screens. You are not in that palace, not one of the guards, not one of the scribes. You are only drifting past the doorway where she listens, watching a girl who is learning how to be irresistible, not through beauty, but through presence. She watches the Roman guests closely. the way they boast, the way they tire. She notices how they respond when someone flatters them, and how they lean forward when someone challenges them just slightly. She begins to practice this, gently, during dinners, during walks in the garden, during moments that feel like accidents but are not. She asks questions no one expects a girl to ask. She quotes their poets, and then offers her own opinion, slowly but firmly. They remember her, not because she is loud, but because she makes them feel seen. Years later, they will say she was born seductive. But no, she was born observant. What came next? She chose. By the time she's 17, the court begins whispering more about her, not in fear, but in curiosity. Who is she meeting with after dusk? Why is the priest from Thebes suddenly backing her father's choices? Why is the grain flowing more smoothly through the port? Cleopatra answers none of it. She just smiles. And in Rome, her father speaks proudly of her to anyone who will listen. She calms people, he says. She persuades. He doesn't know how much. He doesn't ask, and she doesn't tell. Because Cleopatra knows better than to explain power while you're still building it. Let the garden grow darker now. Let the torches burn low. The girl still sits quietly, surrounded by cushions and silence. But already she is more than a princess. She is the shadow of a queen. And when the moment comes, when her father is gone, when the court is divided, when the world is watching Egypt with impatient eyes, she will not demand the throne. She will invite the world to offer it to her. But not yet. Tonight, she is still listening. And you're still drifting. Let your breath slow. Let the marble fade. The queen is coming. But first, we watch her become. Let the palace wake again, but only softly. No crowds, no trumpets. Just the faint scrape of sandals on stone, the rustle of silk, the hush of servants who know not to speak too loudly. The girl you met before is still here, Cleopatra, still not queen, but something is shifting. Not in the laws, not in the scrolls, in the glances. The way men lower their voices when she walks past. The way courtiers pause mid-sentence when she enters a room. The palace doesn't know it yet. But Cleopatra has begun her quiet campaign. She's 17 now. Her face has changed. More angles, more stillness. But her eyes are the same. Wide, knowing, calm. She is not the most beautiful woman in the court. But beauty isn't what she's using. It's attention. She gives it. She withholds it. And she always notices what others try to hide. Her father, King Ptolemy XII, is aging. His voice grows thinner. His hands tremble when he signs decrees. He still rules, technically, but more and more Cleopatra speaks in his place. At first only to messengers, then to governors, then one day to a Roman delegate, a man twice her age, arrogant, dismissive. He doesn't want to speak to her, so she speaks his language, fluent Latin, soft as linen, and before long he's smiling. He returns 3 more times that week, and every time his tone changes. By the 4th visit he bows. The court watches, not openly, not boldly, but with quiet calculation. Who is she meeting in the garden? Why is the Syrian envoy asking for her by name? Why does the grain distributor now answer only to her signature? No one challenges her, because she's never loud, never forceful, just effective. She makes people feel like her suggestions were their ideas, and it works. One evening during a small dinner, 10 people, wine, quiet music, she leans toward a nobleman who controls shipping routes along the coast. She compliments his latest trade report, asks him what spices he's bringing in next season. He smiles too widely, and by morning he's redirected a key shipment of wheat right where she wanted it. He tells people it was his idea, and Cleopatra lets him believe it. This is how it begins, not with seduction in the way the world expects, but with conversation, with charm that wraps itself around power and makes it feel like pleasure. She doesn't need to touch anyone. She barely raises her voice, but people start doing what she wants because they want to please her. They want to be part of her circle, to be the one she glances at during a banquet, the one she thanks just a little more softly than necessary. The other royals begin to notice, her siblings especially. They smile at her in public, but in private, their voices grow sharper. One of her sisters tries to sabotage a public address, changing lines in the speech, adjusting protocol. Cleopatra discovers it the night before. She doesn't yell. She doesn't accuse. She simply reorders the speech and delivers it so smoothly the next day, no one ever suspects it had been tampered with. The sister stays silent for weeks after, because Cleopatra doesn't seek revenge. She doesn't need to. The embarrassment of being outplayed is punishment enough, and she doesn't want enemies. She wants memory. She wants people to remember what it felt like to underestimate her and to lose. There's a senator from Rome who arrives one spring. Important, well connected. He asks for a tour of the palace gardens. The queen, her father, is too ill. So Cleopatra walks him herself. They talk for an hour. He laughs, she listens. He tries to impress her. She lets him. She leads him past the myrrh trees, the papyrus pools, the caged white peacocks. He asks her why she's not married. She says nothing, just smiles and lets the wind speak for her. That same senator will later advocate in Rome to keep her on the throne. He'll say she's intelligent, diplomatic, charming, he'll add casually. But what he won't admit is the truth, that during that walk he felt something shift. He had come to inspect a royal child. He left convinced he'd met a queen. Let the moon rise again now behind the columns. Let the orange trees sway in the warm wind. You are not one of the noblemen watching her from across the courtyard. You are not the scribe noting down her words, trying to understand how a single sentence caused a man to change a vote. You are only here, floating alongside her growing myth, watching as flirtation becomes function, and function becomes power. She still writes letters by hand, still meets with priests, still asks questions no one expects her to ask. And every time she does, another door opens, another barrier drops, another voice, once opposed, softens when it says her name. This is not a love story, not yet, but it is a story of longing, not hers, theirs, everyone around her, longing for her approval, her laughter, her favor. And the deeper they fall into wanting it, the easier it becomes for her to lead them where she wants them to go. The palace still belongs to her father, but more and more it moves to her rhythm. His courtiers become her allies, his ministers her messengers, his silence her stage. Cleopatra doesn't take power, she invites it in, and no one, not even her brothers, realizes it's happening. Not yet, but soon. Sleep now. The girl in the garden is done for the night. She has planted the idea. The whispers have started, and the throne is listening. Let the sun rise over Alexandria now, slowly, like silk sliding across marble. The sea breeze is warm, the waves hush against the palace harbor, and inside the great white halls change is in the air. Her father has returned, Ptolemy the 12th, once driven into exile, now restored with Roman help, steps back into the city like a man unsure of his own crown. But Cleopatra does not flinch. She has watched the throne sway. She has watched the court scatter like birds. And now she is ready. There is no coronation for a daughter, no decree naming her heir. But Cleopatra doesn't need a title to be noticed. She steps out beside her father at ceremonies, speaks beside him at council. She smiles at senators, corrects tax records, and when merchants kneel, it's her name they whisper first. She isn't stealing power. She's wearing it, gently, like perfume. Rome watches always, because Egypt owes Rome everything: grain, gold, loyalty. But what Rome receives in return is something else: charm. Cleopatra speaks their language, quotes their poets, tells them what they want to hear, and then tells them more. Not lies, just music shaped like diplomacy. When Ptolemy hosts a delegation from the Roman Senate, it is Cleopatra who prepares the event. She chooses the wine, the music, the pacing of the conversations. She knows that power isn't in what is said, it's in when it's said, how it's said, and who feels seen when it is. At the feast, she sits just off center, not beside her father, but not far, close enough to be noticed. She listens, laughs, offers a question now and then, perfectly timed. The Roman guests lean in. They've heard of her, of course, but hearing isn't seeing. And now that they see her, the measured way she moves, the way her voice warms when speaking to an old senator, then cools into mystery when she turns to another, they begin to understand. She's not the future. She's already here. Back in the palace, the servants whisper too. Cleopatra was seen walking with a Roman ambassador alone. Cleopatra received a shipment of parchment and perfumes from a Roman general's household, unsigned. Cleopatra's name is beginning to drift farther than the court, all the way to Rome. Her brothers notice, especially Ptolemy the 13th. He's younger, less confident, and more easily manipulated by the older men around him. They speak to him in closed rooms. They tell him stories. They plant doubts about how popular Cleopatra is becoming, about how she overshadows, about how people bend toward her when she walks past, as if drawn by some invisible thread. Still, for now, she is safe, because she is useful. The court runs smoother when she speaks, the trade routes hum, the temple offerings arrive on time, and Ptolemy the 12th, tired from years of exile, is happy to have the calm she brings. He calls her his pearl. She only smiles, because Cleopatra knows better than to believe a man who owes everything to someone else, especially when that someone else is Rome. Let the day fade now. Let the torches be lit. Let the music drift up from the courtyard. In her chambers, Cleopatra is writing, not a letter, not a decree, notes about who said what, who sat where, whose glance lingered too long across the feast table. Nothing is wasted. Not a laugh, not a silence, not a sigh. She remembers them all. There is one adviser, elderly, clever, once loyal to her father, who offers her counsel. She listens. He warns her not to become too visible, not to outshine her brothers, not to become the subject of gossip. She thanks him, and the next week she wears plain linen to a state procession. But that night, at a private gathering, she recites Roman verse in the original Latin, dances with a visiting noble, and has 5 new letters sent to key officials. Let the gossip rise. She controls where it leads. Because Cleopatra understands the difference between scandal and strategy. Scandal burns quickly, but strategy spreads. Whispers become loyalty. Loyalty becomes leverage, and leverage becomes rule. Her father begins to fade more each month. He leans more on his eldest daughter, not formally, but practically. She prepares speeches, writes responses, meets with envoys, and never once calls it power, because real power doesn't announce itself. It's simply felt, like gravity. One night she walks alone through the library. Papyrus scrolls line the walls, words of poets, philosophers, generals, so many men writing themselves into history. She touches a scroll by Plato and thinks quietly, what if charm could be strategy? What if affection was architecture, not a weakness, a design? She lets the thought linger, then walks away. You are not in the palace. You are not one of the scribes or guards, but you can feel the shift. She is no longer a girl watching from the edge. She is the gravity of the room. Her father dies that winter. No grand farewell, just silence, and a will, naming Cleopatra as co-ruler with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, a child. Let the crown glimmer now. Let the court hold its breath. She has been named, not as decoration, but as ruler. Still, her brother's advisors close ranks. Still, Rome hesitates. Still, the whispers begin again. But Cleopatra doesn't panic. She just smiles, because she knows what they do not. This was never about bloodlines. It was about presence. And she has more of it than anyone in Alexandria. Sleep now. She has stepped into the light, not as someone they fear, but someone they can't look away from. And when the throne begins to slip, she will know exactly how to draw it back. Let the moon hang heavy over Alexandria tonight. Let the streets empty. Let the palace go quiet. Too quiet. Because something has changed. The girl who watched from shadows, the woman who learned to speak with her eyes, has now been crowned. But not alone. Cleopatra rules with her brother Ptolemy. At least that's what the scrolls say. But in the halls, in the council rooms, in the soft spaces where real power breathes, only one name is truly whispered, Cleopatra. And that is a problem. Her brother is just a boy, 13, nervous, easily swayed, and the men around him, advisors, generals, ministers, do not enjoy being outshined by a woman, especially not one who smiles too knowingly, who speaks too well, remembers too much, commands too softly to resist. So they begin to move against her. Not openly, not yet, just little things. Meetings rescheduled without her, messages that never arrive, allies discouraged from visiting her chamber. It's not war, it's erosion. And Cleopatra feels it. Still, she doesn't protest, not with words. She shows up anyway, smiles anyway, sits at the edge of council tables and asks questions no one expects her to ask. She sends notes, clever, kind, just slightly too flattering, to men she suspects are wavering, and some of them pause because they like feeling important. They like being seen, and Cleopatra always knows exactly what to let them see. But the tide continues to pull. A decree is issued. Cleopatra's name will no longer appear first on official documents. Then her face disappears from a new coin. Then her chamber doors are locked one morning and her guards dismissed. Exile. No announcement, no trial, just silence. She leaves Alexandria with a small entourage. No ceremony, no crown, but her chin is still high, because Cleopatra knows something her enemies have forgotten. The throne is not marble, it's attention, and she knows how to draw it. She travels east towards Syria. The desert wind is hot, the days long, but she remains composed. Along the way, she visits temples, speaks to priests, meets with merchants and old friends of her father. They all listen, and many of them follow. By the time she reaches the border, she is no longer just an exile, she is a presence, and the whispers are already starting. She was wronged. She's the rightful queen. She has something planned. Let the lamps burn low now. Let the desert stars blink overhead. She sits beneath a canopy writing by firelight, not in grief, not in desperation, but in strategy. She drafts letters to nearby governors, warm, polite, but precise. She doesn't beg. She invites. She reminds them of the stability Egypt had under her hand, of the trade routes she kept open, the taxes she adjusted, the Roman favors she secured. And slowly from the edges of the map, support begins to flow toward her. Not loudly, just enough, just in time. Back in Alexandria, her brother's advisors celebrate. They think she's fading. But something else is coming. A Roman general, powerful, calculating, famous not just for victories, but for curiosity. Julius Caesar. He arrives in Alexandria to settle a dispute, one of many Egypt owes to Rome. He expects to find a squabbling boy king. What he finds instead is something else. Not immediately, not at the gates, not on the throne, but hidden, waiting. Cleopatra learns of his arrival and says nothing. She watches the city from a distance and begins to prepare. Not an army, not a coup, an entrance. Sleep now. The crown may have slipped, but it hasn't shattered. It's just waiting for the right moment. And so is she. Let the palace breathe again. The wind has changed. The marble halls are cool. The scent of the sea drifts in through the colonnades. Roman armor gleams quietly under the flicker of torchlight. Julius Caesar has arrived in Alexandria, and the court holds its breath. He is not a king, not yet, but he is power, walking, watching, judging. His name travels faster than ships, and every voice in the palace speaks it with care. Ptolemy the 13th, the boy king, welcomes him nervously. There are gifts, there is ceremony, there are polished lies, and yet nothing feels settled, because one voice is missing, one presence, one queen. Cleopatra has not disappeared. She is only waiting, watching from beyond the city, listening to every whisper, learning exactly what she needs to know. And now it is time, not for a plea, not for an argument, for a performance. She chooses night because night is quiet, unthreatening, perfect for slipping between locked gates. She travels by boat, small, silent, only a few attendants with her. At the edge of the palace, a trusted ally greets her. The plan is simple. She cannot walk in. She must be brought in, not as royalty, as a gift. They roll her into fabric. Some say a rug, some say linen. Tightly, carefully. She does not resist. She does not speak, because she understands exactly what this is, an illusion. And Cleopatra has always known how to turn illusion into truth. They carry her in, past guards, past columns, into the chambers of Julius Caesar. It is late. He is tired. And then the fabric unfurls, and she rises, not in fear, not in apology. She stands, composed, calm, luminous in the glow of a single oil lamp, hair dark, coiled like history, eyes lined softly in kohl, voice barely above a whisper. Caesar, she says. No greeting, no title, just his name. And he looks at her, not in confusion, but in fascination, because no one has ever entered his life like this. She does not beg. She explains. Clear, precise, soft, but unshaking. She tells him her story, not all of it, just enough. Enough to shift the mood of the room, enough to change the shape of the night. He listens. He leans forward. He offers wine, and they talk of Egypt, of Rome, of alliances, of how power moves quietly through the corridors of charm. What happened after history suggests, but never confirms. Some say she stayed the night. Some say she simply returned to her chamber. But the truth doesn't matter as much as the result. In the morning, everything had changed. Caesar declares her co-ruler. He orders her brother's forces to stand down. He speaks of stability, fairness, Roman interests, but everyone understands what has happened. Cleopatra has returned, not with soldiers, not with weapons, with presence. The court stirs, some scoff, some stare, but no one dares to confront her directly, because now she walks beside Caesar, at festivals, at public addresses, at temple dedications. She does not cling, she glides, and he, the most powerful man in the known world, follows her pace. Her brother, Ptolemy XIII, resists. There is unrest, disorder, and eventually a confrontation. But Cleopatra never raises her voice. She lets Rome handle the noise. And when it ends, quietly, inevitably, the boy king is gone, and she rules alone. Well, not quite alone. She now has Caesar, and soon something else. A child. Let the Nile hush now. Let the city still. Cleopatra, once smuggled through shadows, now sits beside the man who holds the fate of nations in his palm. But it is she who changed the course of the empire, not with force, but with elegance, with timing, with a whisper wrapped in silk. Sleep now. Her crown is no longer slipping. It rests steady, and she earned it. One breath, one glance, one perfectly placed entrance at a time. Let the city shimmer in the morning light. Alexandria is awake now. The markets stir, the temples breathe incense, and the harbor swells with the rhythm of the Nile. A Roman flag flutters beside Egyptian silk, because two powers now share this place, Rome and Cleopatra. She has returned, no longer the girl sent away, no longer the woman speaking from the corners of the court. Now she walks at the center, with Caesar beside her, and yet she does not cling. She is not decoration, she is not trophy. She is presence. Together they attend ceremonies, side by side, but never equal. Because Cleopatra even now holds something Caesar does not. She is Egypt, its symbol, its language, its sunlit silence and moonlit mystery. And he, for all his power, is only visiting. She understands this balance, and she plays it gently. She lets Caesar shine, but never outshine her. She hosts banquets again, not like before. These are smaller, sharper. Guests from Rome, envoys from Greece, priests, philosophers, poets, and always the quiet pulse of something unspoken beneath the conversation. Cleopatra does not debate. She suggests. She laughs once, and lets the silence afterward do the work. When she speaks Latin, the Romans lean forward. When she shifts to Greek, the scholars nod. When she answers in Egyptian, the room stills. No queen in memory has ever spoken like this. No queen has ever made men feel this seen and this small. She is more than beautiful now. She is known. In Alexandria, children call her the goddess returned. In Rome, letters describe her as dazzling, dangerous, divine. No one agrees on her face, but everyone remembers the way she spoke their name. Let the garden cool now. Let the wine be poured slowly. She walks through the courtyard after dusk, Caesar beside her. They speak not of conquest, but of story. How Rome sees itself. How Egypt has lasted longer than even Jupiter. He listens, because Cleopatra knows how to tell a tale, especially when that tale is about herself. She begins to craft her image carefully, not through gossip, through pageantry. She dresses not as a queen, but as Isis, divine mother, eternal power. Every appearance is choreographed, not for luxury, for meaning. The gold means fertility. The lapis means protection. The silks flow like the Nile itself. To worship her is to believe she is Egypt, and more, her people do. When Caesar leaves Egypt, he does not go alone. Cleopatra sails with him, part way, and when she returns, she is pregnant, not quietly, not shamefully, openly, because this is not scandal. This is strategy. A child ties Rome to Egypt forever, and Cleopatra is never just a woman who was loved. She is the mother of a future. The boy is named Caesarion, Little Caesar, and already the city whispers, will he be Roman? Will he be king? But Cleopatra doesn't answer. She only holds him gently and lets the world wonder. Back in Alexandria, she rules more fully now. Caesar is far, but her influence is near. His letters mention her with respect. His allies tread carefully in her direction. His enemies use her name like a warning. Cleopatra watches all of it and smiles, because this is what she wanted. Not love, leverage. She begins building again. Libraries, temples, port improvements. She meets with architects in the morning, priests in the afternoon, poets at night, always asking questions, always adjusting, always listening for where affection and power overlap. Because Cleopatra knows the truth of her reign. Her crown does not sit on her head. It lives in her voice. Let the waves settle outside her window. Let the city sleep. She sits alone at her desk now, a scroll open, a letter half written, not to Caesar, to herself, planning, preparing, because she knows nothing stays still. Rome is shifting, and Caesar is not immortal. But Cleopatra is not afraid. She has made herself something more than ruler, more than lover. She has made herself essential to Egypt, to her people, even to history. And soon she will step into a new role, not as a partner, but as a legend. Let the Tiber River flow slow, let the olive trees sway, let the marble temples cast long shadows across the forum. Rome doesn't sleep, not really, but tonight something is different, because word has spread. She has arrived. Cleopatra. Not a letter, not an envoy. The queen herself. And she hasn't come quietly. She sails into Rome not like a guest, but like a question. Beautiful, elegant, measured, and impossible to ignore. No one knows quite what to call her. Not wife, not concubine, not prisoner, not ally. So instead they call her what they cannot explain. Dangerous. Because Cleopatra has not come to beg. She has come to exist, fully, unapologetically, in their city. And her presence does what swords never could. It makes Rome uncomfortable. She stays in Caesar's private gardens across the river. A golden cage, some say. But Cleopatra does not feel caged. She brings her court with her linens, her perfumes, her books. She dresses not as a Roman matron, but as a goddess. Flowing silks, jewels that sparkle like Nile water, hair oiled and scented with myrrh. And when she walks through the garden gates, the city stares. Women copy her style, first in secret, then in salons, then in public. They line their eyes in kohl. They braid their hair in coils. They ask for fabrics from Alexandria. And slowly, the streets of Rome begin to shimmer with a whisper of Egypt. Not everyone is pleased, especially Caesar's wife. Calpurnia watches from the shadows. She says nothing, but her allies speak for her. Senators grumble. Priests raise eyebrows. Wives whisper behind hands. Who is she, they ask. A queen without a crown here. A guest who brings too much influence. A woman who smiles too slowly to be harmless. But Cleopatra says nothing. She does not fight back. She simply exists, and lets Rome bend toward her, inch by inch. She attends private dinners, only the most important. She listens more than she speaks. And yet when she does speak, the room stills. She talks of astronomy, of translation, of Nile floods and desert winds, of how leadership is not about ruling, but reading the people. And senators, used to debate, not poetry, find themselves leaning in, just to hear more. Caesar visits her almost daily, sometimes just a short walk, sometimes hours. He laughs more around her, or perhaps he listens more. And though he is still Rome's strongest man, people begin to notice. He changes when she is near, not weaker, just quieter, more careful with his words, because Cleopatra doesn't command him. She simply inspires him to choose her point of view. Let the night deepen now. The garden lamps flicker. The sounds of Rome grow distant. In her villa across the river, Cleopatra is writing, not to Caesar, not to home, to herself. She is keeping record of who visited, what they said, what they meant, because she understands something vital. You do not conquer a place by raising a flag. You conquer it by learning its heartbeat and letting it start to beat for you. Her child Caesarion is nearby, still small, still quiet. But his presence speaks volumes. A Roman general's son, an Egyptian queen's heir, the future in soft curls and wide eyes. No one says the word dynasty, but the word hangs in the air, unspoken and heavy. Cleopatra knows Rome will never fully embrace her. She is too foreign, too powerful, too remembered, but she doesn't need their full embrace. She just needs their respect, and perhaps their fear. The city shifts again. Artists begin sketching her. Writers begin drafting little fictions. Street performers mimic her walk, sometimes mocking, sometimes reverent. She has become something more than real. She is an idea now, and ideas are hard to remove. Then, one morning, the forum ripples with tension. Caesar has made a decision. He places a golden statue of Cleopatra in the temple of Venus Genetrix, where Roman ancestors are honored, not in secret, in marble, a goddess, beside their goddess. And the city erupts, quietly. There are no riots, no shouts, just murmurs that she is getting too close, that she is changing the republic, that Rome is losing itself in her shadow. Cleopatra smiles, because she never asked for the statue. She never asked for the tribute, but she knows what it means. She has entered Roman history, and no one can take that back. Sleep now. She still walks the garden, still whispers with Caesar, still lingers just long enough for the city to notice, and then miss her when she is gone. Let the sails stretch wide in the breeze. Let the oars dip gently into the blue. Cleopatra is sailing home, not exiled, not dismissed, not broken. She leaves Rome the way she entered it, calmly, completely, on her own terms. Behind her, the marble city still murmurs. Stories, statues, a small boy with Roman blood and Egyptian eyes. She doesn't take Rome with her. She doesn't need to. She has already left something behind. The Alexandrian harbor shimmers when her ship arrives. Crowds line the shore, not because they were told to, because they want to see her, their queen, their Isis reborn, the woman who went into the empire's heart and came back untouched. More than a queen now, a myth. She walks down the gangplank slowly, composed, regal. Caesarion is carried behind her, not hidden, not cloaked, displayed. Because Cleopatra understands, visibility is power. She resumes her reign without announcement, no proclamation, no parade, just presence. The court falls back into rhythm. She meets with advisors, approves building projects, instructs priests on festival arrangements. Her throne is not contested, because there is no contest. No one shines brighter. Let the palace breathe again. Cool breezes drift through sheer curtains, the sound of lyres from the gardens. She sits quietly during council meetings, but always at the center, her voice soft, her gaze steady. No longer the young woman who watched from the shadows. Now it is others who watch her. Cleopatra writes more now, to distant rulers, to merchants, to Rome. She signs every scroll the same way. Queen of Egypt, mother of the son of Caesar, daughter of the Nile. She never boasts, she never explains, she only reminds. Rome changes while she reigns. New faces rise, new ambitions bloom. Caesar is gone now, not by her hand, not by scandal, simply gone. And Rome trembles in the silence he leaves behind. The city sends word. New leadership, new alliances, new questions. Cleopatra responds with grace and distance because she knows her place now, not in Roman halls, but in their minds. She is the remembered one, the example, the one no one can forget, no matter how much they try. Let the night come gently now. Let the stars turn over the desert. Cleopatra walks the temple courtyard barefoot, trailing incense smoke. She listens to the priests recite the old stories. She smiles, because she understands them now, not just as worship, but as branding. Gods don't age, and neither, it seems, do myths. Years pass quietly. Her court thrives. Her son grows. Her image appears in more temples, more coins. She is not adored because of her charm. She is adored because of what she symbolizes. A ruler who doesn't ask for power. A ruler who is power. And then, a letter. A Roman delegation. A new general. Mark Antony. The name arrives first, then the ships, then the invitation. He wants her. Not romantically, not yet. He wants her alliance. Egyptian wealth, Egyptian grain, Egyptian mystique. Cleopatra considers. She remembers Caesar's world, its rules, its rituals. She remembers how quickly Rome shifts its favorites. Antony is charming, yes, but charm isn't enough for her anymore. Now, she expects strategy, so she makes him wait days, then a week. Messages go unanswered. Roman officers linger at the palace gates, and when she finally agrees to meet, she chooses the setting. Not a hall, not a court, a barge. Let the river rise now, let the sails fill. The queen prepares not a visit, but an arrival, a floating palace, sails of purple, oars of silver, perfumes drifting on the water, musicians, dancers, gold stitched into linen, and in the center, her. The historians will write about it, how Antony stood on the shore and watched her come to him, how he smiled before she even spoke, how she stepped onto the land like it was hers, because it was, and how she greeted him not like a ruler meeting another, but like a story resuming its next chapter. No one remembers the exact words, only the feeling that when Cleopatra spoke, softly, confidently, the entire delegation forgot why they came, because she made it feel like they were the ones being honored. The dinner that followed was legendary, not for what was served, but for how it felt. She laughed. She listened. She guided conversation like a riverbank shaping the water. Antony was known for his voice, his wit, his warmth, but Cleopatra was warmer, not louder, just deeper. Let the torches flicker now. Let the dancers rest. The feast is over. But something else has begun. Not romance, not yet, just attention. The kind that leads to memory, and memory as always leads to power. Sleep now. She has opened a new chapter, not by conquering, by inviting. And soon, the queen will rise again in the arms of her next alliance. Let the palace lamps glow low, let the Nile ripple under moonlight, let Alexandria sigh, heavy with music, with scent, with story, because now Cleopatra is not alone. Mark Antony walks beside her, and something in the air has shifted. He is not Caesar, not as polished, not as precise, but that suits her, because Cleopatra is no longer trying to fit into Rome's image. She is shaping her own. And Antony, for all his power, follows her rhythm. They become inseparable. Not publicly, not always, but behind every door, in every council, in every gesture of empire, there is both of them. Two figures, two voices, one direction. It begins as politics. He needs grain. She needs protection. He needs wealth. She needs recognition. But soon it becomes something else, something easier, stranger, more powerful. They enjoy each other, not just affection, laughter, that rare ease between two people who understand what it means to rule and what it costs. She hosts banquets again, this time not to impress, to enjoy. The wine flows, the floors shine, the food is gold dusted and sweetened with honey. And Antony watches her the way poets watch flame, not to control it, just to be close to it. They create a world around themselves, not just rooms, a rhythm. They dine together each night. They dress as gods for festivals. They play games with local fishermen, laugh at riddles, make wagers with silk scarves, and all of it, every indulgent, dreamy detail, becomes part of their myth. In Alexandria, the people rejoice. They love a queen who walks among them. And now she walks with someone who looks at her like she's already divine. Antony takes on Egyptian customs, wears Egyptian robes, sits in Egyptian temples beside her, quiet and reverent. He is not pretending to be king, he is simply living inside her world. Rome, of course, watches and worries, because this is no simple affair. This is a statement that a Roman general has left the stone halls of the Republic for incense, for laughter, for something that can't quite be explained. Whispers return. Has he gone too far? Is she controlling him? Will he forget Rome altogether? Cleopatra doesn't respond. She doesn't need to. She just lives the life they fear. One night under the stars, a ceremony is held. Antony declares Cleopatra Queen of Kings. Caesarion, her son by Caesar, is named King of Kings. Other children are given titles too. The empire seems to expand around their dinner table, not through war, but through proclamation. And gold. The Western world blinks, because this is not the way rulers are made. But Cleopatra doesn't play by those rules. She's writing new ones, wrapped in linen, sung to lyres, kissed by Nile winds. They spend weeks sailing, long, lazy trips along the river. Each stop becomes legend. Each gift she gives becomes a relic. And everywhere they go, the message is the same. Egypt is not waiting for Rome's permission. Egypt already is. Let the river hush now. Let the night deepen. They sit beneath a canopy of woven reeds, fruit on the table, a half-finished poem beside them. They speak of the stars, not strategy, not threats, just stars, because even the most calculating rulers need softness, and they have found it in each other. But softness is never still, and history is always watching. Rome begins to turn. Caesar is gone. Octavian rises, cold where Antony is warm, quiet where Cleopatra shines, and he does not like what he sees. Still, for a moment, the world belongs to them. Two lovers on a throne that stretches farther than borders, not because they took it, because they built it, word by word, laugh by laugh, gaze by gaze, and in that moment they are not a scandal. They are a season, long, lush, eternal for as long as it lasts. Sleep now. The queen does not worry yet. The general does not look back. They are together. The city is gold lit, and all the world listens. Let the curtains draw slowly tonight. Let the lamps glow low, like the last golden light before dusk. Let the palace grow quiet, because all performances must one day close. And Cleopatra, who lived her life like a play written in silk and starlight, is almost at the final act. The world has shifted again. Rome changes. Octavian, cold, sharp, steady, has risen, not with laughter, not with charm, with silence. And Rome, weary of spectacle, begins to turn its back on indulgence. Mark Antony watches it happen. The alliances grow thin. The messengers become colder. The Senate, once amused, now whispers behind closed doors. They say he's been taken. They say he's distracted. They say he's ruled, not ruling, by her. And Cleopatra? She does not panic. She sees the storm coming, but she refuses to run from it. In Alexandria, she prepares, not with weapons, with grace. She hosts fewer banquets, speaks more softly in council, walks with a steady dignity, as if nothing has changed, because dignity, when worn well, becomes a kind of armor. And still, they love her, her people, her priests, her palace, because Cleopatra has never needed to demand loyalty. She simply earned it. One morning she rises early, no makeup, no silk, just linen. She walks through the royal gardens alone, touching herbs, listening to the water, remembering every moment when she chose not to be afraid. Caesarion walks beside her now, a young man, bright, curious, gentle, a symbol of two empires, a living link between Rome and Egypt. She tells him stories, not warnings, just truths about his father, about the Nile, about how real power doesn't always look like a crown. Sometimes it looks like patience. Rome is coming, not in waves, not in chaos, in silence. And Cleopatra knows what this means, but she refuses to be reduced. So she makes her final arrangements, carefully, lovingly. She prepares her tomb, not as a grave, as a gallery, columns, statues, painted ceilings, a library of scrolls, a chamber filled with everything she's chosen to be remembered by. Because Cleopatra will not be forgotten as someone who lost. She will be remembered as someone who shaped how the world remembers her. And then the day comes. Rome enters the city. No fire, no war drums, just the soft sound of sandals on stone. Octavian arrives, and for the first time Cleopatra meets a Roman who does not smile. He doesn't flatter. He doesn't charm. He simply informs. Egypt is no longer hers, and she, once Queen of Kings, will be taken to Rome, paraded, displayed, as proof of his victory. But Cleopatra was never meant to be displayed. She was meant to design the display. And so, she makes one last decision, not out of fear, out of control. What happens next, the scrolls disagree on. Some say she left quietly. Some say she wore her finest gown. Some say she took her place in the tomb beside Antony, beside their memory. All we know is this. She left the world like she lived in it, deliberately. And what remained? Not ashes, not sorrow, a legend, painted on temple walls, etched into scrolls, whispered in every language that remembered her name. Rome tried to explain her away, called her manipulative, called her dangerous, said she was only beautiful. But history, the kind Cleopatra helped write, remembers something else, that she made choices, that she created image, that she took a throne and made it a theater, a temple, a story, and that somehow through the rise and fall of entire empires, her name still glows. Let the story dim now, let the sea be still. You have walked with a queen, not one of armies but of attention, a woman who turned softness into strategy and presence into power. You are not in Alexandria. You are not on the river or in the temple or in the tomb, but for a while you were with her, and now you sleep, not to forget, but to dream. Good night, dear dreamer.